Alright, the next light we're going to play with is the target spotlight. These are very simple lights to use. Basically, we define the source of the light and the target of the light. So as we can see here in my perspective view what's going on there. I'm just going to move my target just a little, my source just a little bit, and also my target. I may even give it a bit more elevation. Right. If we take a look at this view here now, you will see that only light that falls within the cone of my target spotlight, so you can see the cone, was having light fall upon it. Now that's because it's treating it as if it was a searchlight, and it's just throwing light down onto my scene. So any object that fell within the cone, or part of the objects that fell within the cone, are receiving light. So if I just go and zoom out a bit and select it, here we can see all the controllers for my target spotlight. We can see that it's a target spotlight. We can see what kind of colour light it's casting, whether it's going to cast shadows or not. And if I just render that now, you can see that each object actually throws its own shadow down onto the surface below them. We can control the strength of the spotlight, so I can make it 2 times brighter, and you can see almost immediately that it's changed. We can control the kind of colour that spotlight is throwing out. So here we can see everything's turned a murky shade of red, and if I render that, you can immediately see the effects. How it's going to affect the surfaces, how it's going to use and show its cones. So if I can tell it to show its lighting cone, I can tell it to overshoot, and what that means is it's going to throw light backwards of itself as well. I don't like using that. We can control the hotspot and fall off. The hotspot is the inner cone, the fall off is the outer cone. So here I can make the hotspot bigger or smaller, and I can make the fall off bigger and smaller. So if I wanted to make a very tight cone with a large fall off, I could do that, and we can render and see what kind of effect that's going to give us. And there we can see a very bright spot in the center of my render, and the light sort of feathers out to the edges. So target spotlights are very useful. We can use it to project a map or a shape. So I'm going to tell it to project a bitmap. And this can be almost anything. So I can have it project this here. And if we render what's going to happen now, here we can see it's almost like a piece of film running through a projector, and it's projecting that down onto my surfaces. There's all sorts of other things we can do. We can turn on attenuation. Now this would be like the outer limits of the spotlight. So if I say use it and show it, here we can see this attenuation cone appears. If I turn it on, we can see the start or the near part of my attenuation, and we can see the far part of my attenuation. So you have an awful lot of control over how the spotlight's going to work. So now if I render that, you can see that how the attenuation is working there as well. And there you can see not only does it feather out to the sides, it also feathers backwards now, or down the scene. That's because my attenuation only reaches so far. Decay, how it's going to lose the strength of light. There you can see not a very good result with that option. So there's all sorts of things you can do with spotlights. We can turn on the shadows, turn them off. We can use shadow maps, or we can ray trace shadows. Now ray trace shadows are sharper. They're more crisp than normal shadow maps. and they're not as usable in some areas. So you can see here that the edges of the shadows are almost they're very harsh. And shadow maps. The edge of the shadow is softer, a little bit blurrier. We can predefine our shadows. We can have lighting effects, shadow colors. We can have atmospheric effects turned on, and that will simulate different atmospheric effects. At the moment there are none turned on. We can add atmospheric effects, and we'll get to this with the special effects areas. So what you can't do with lighting isn't really an issue. It's what you can do with it. So learn how to manipulate lighting and what you can and can't do with them. Have fun, because like I said, lighting will basically control the overall look and feel of your scene, which in most cases is very important.